The following is an Operation Podcast production.
Gut health and microbiome have become actually terms that everybody knows. Even just 5 years ago, I don't think people knew the word microbiome. What we're referring to when we talk about gut health and the gut microbiome is after you eat food, there's literally a factory of 100 trillion bacteria that are there helping you metabolize all of that food. And so there are bacteria, viruses, fungi. This is kind of what is meant by the microbiome.
I think a lot of people might be acting on more misinformation. What are maybe two of the biggest misconceptions, in your opinion, when it comes to gut health that people might be leaning into too much?
All the products on the shelves are more or less the same. So using the phrase probiotics and thinking a probiotic is a probiotic is not true. But if you take an antibiotic and this strain is able to survive that antibiotic, it can start to replicate and divide. And when it gets too high and there's nobody else around, it makes you super sick. And actually, ultimately, it's fatal. Hi, I'm Colleen Cutcliffe. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pendulum Therapeutics. This is Ever Forward Radio.
When we say gut health, gut microbiome, what are we really talking about?
Well, it's a great question because gut health and microbiome have become actually terms that everybody knows. Even just 5 years ago, I don't think people knew the word microbiome. I can tell you, my parents would often ask me, what's that thing you work in again? And I would say the microbiome. They're like, oh, right. We were trying to explain to somebody. So it's pretty amazing to see how in just a short amount of time, these two phrases, gut health and gut microbiome, have become so relevant and that people are really realizing how important they are to our health. And so what we're referring to when we talk about gut health and the gut microbiome is after you eat food and it goes through your stomach, there's literally a factory of 100 trillion bacteria that are there helping you metabolize all of that food. And so there are bacteria, viruses, fungi. This is kind of what is meant by the microbiome. And their role is to help us metabolize foods. And they actually interact with our own immune system, our inflammatory response, our metabolism. And we've co-evolved with them. And they play a super important role in both disease and health. And we're just starting to learn how important that they are.
What do you think are a couple of the biggest misconceptions out there when it comes to the microbiome? There's a lot of information and misinformation. I think a lot of people might be acting on more misinformation. What are maybe two of the biggest misconceptions, in your opinion, when it comes to gut health that people might be leaning into too much?
I think one of the big misconceptions is that all the products on the shelves are more or less the same. So using the phrase probiotics and thinking a probiotic is a probiotic is not true. There are varying degrees of quality of products that are out there. There are companies who really take that quality seriously. And there are people, unfortunately, who are putting things on shelves that don't even have the ingredients that they say are in there. So not all probiotics are created equal. That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. And then the second one, I think, is kind of getting some definition around these really technical terms like probiotic and prebiotic and postbiotic. I feel like they're kind of flying around everywhere and it's hard to know what am I talking about.
Are they all equally important? How can we kind of better understand and navigate those three?
Well, so the first thing is, what are they? So when we talk about probiotics, those are actually the bacteria. So that's the thing that's doing all the work. That's the living being. The prebiotics are the food that feed that probiotic. So when we talk about prebiotics, that's things like fibers and polyphenols and things that feed the probiotics. And then the postbiotics are all the things that these little machines are making. So the probiotics eat the prebiotics and then they create postbiotics. So there's an argument about which of these is the most important. At the end of the day, what you really want is the thing that those guys are producing. But the really natural way to get at those is to feed them with great prebiotics and to actually supplement your body with the probiotic strains that you might be missing. I think, though, probably the most important thing is knowing which probiotic and from whom should I be taking.
What's the answer to that question?
Besides Pendulum? I think it depends on what the problem you're trying to solve, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But most probiotics out there are really targeting GI issues, and there's specific families of bacteria that are out there that have, clinical data showing that they can help certain people with GI distress. And so if that's a problem that you're trying to solve, a lot of people are out there experimenting on their own with which products are working or not working. If you want to think about how you can boost your metabolism and how your body metabolizes foods, Pendulum really is the only company that has products out there that have clinical data behind them.
And I'm excited to dive into, especially in a little bit, we're going to talk about Akkermansia, this one that was new to me. I've never heard of the strain before. And once I tried the product and gave myself this kind of 30-day test, it's one of those things where you go, oh, I didn't know I actually wasn't feeling as great as I thought I was. But we'll save that for a little bit later on. I've heard you talk about good bacteria, bad bacteria, and how you don't really like to put a line in the sand, so to speak. A lot of people, when we're looking at our gut health, we go, I need more good bacteria, less bad bacteria. But you have a different kind of opinion, no?
Yeah, I think it's a subtlety. It's much easier to sort of classify things as good and bad. But the truth is, not just in probiotics, but in lots of areas, it's a much muddier line than that. And really, you should think about the microbiome like an ecosystem. So these things are all dependent on each other. They're thriving together. It's like a rainforest where you really want the diversity in there. In certain contexts, certain bacteria might be bad, and in other contexts they might be good. So if we do the, garden analogy where you have lots of plants, in your garden you might not like weeds because you've gotten rid of everything else except for the exact plants that you want. And if a weed gets in, it's taking over and it's getting rid of the plants that you want. So in that context, you might feel like a weed is a bad plant. But in the context of a forest, we need weeds because they are there. They're part of the ecosystem. They're delivering nutrients to the soil. And so in that context, they're not actually bad. And so it's really contextually driven. And it's the same thing in your microbiome. There are certain strains where if they're just living in your body and they're part of that ecosystem, you're fine. One great example of this is Clostridium difficile. This is a strain, most of us are walking around with it, and it's really not doing anything harmful. But if you take an antibiotic and this strain is able to survive that antibiotic, it can start to replicate and divide. And when it gets too high and there's nobody else around, it makes you super sick. And actually, ultimately, it's fatal. And so in that context, you would say, well, that's a really bad bacteria.
Fatal is bad.
It's bad.
Yeah. Wow. It's just going for, this says gut health. Is that actually improving our gut health? Do we even need it?
Oh, I feel like it's a very leading question. So it depends, really. I think, first of all, just going after something that says gut health is probably not the ideal tool, unless you're in a particular store. You've gotten a short list from your physician or your nutritionist. That could maybe help narrow the scope. But unfortunately, this is a pretty unregulated space. And so lots of people, and the phrase gut health can be used by anybody. And so the fact that somebody puts gut health on their label doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, promotes gut health.
Yeah.
What does it even mean?
That doesn't mean anything. And that's not a claim that requires any backing to it. Anybody can make that claim. And so I think that phrase is not particularly helpful. Unfortunately, it probably requires a little bit of research before picking your favorite packaging.
Yeah, there's some clever packaging, that's for
Yes.
sure. What are maybe some common things that you think a lot of people are doing in efforts to improve their gut health that might actually be doing them a disservice?
Well, first of all, I think one of the most amazing things about our society right now is so many people are trying to do things to improve their gut health. They're really, really interested in improving health and proactively getting out there and trying to do the right thing. So that is an amazing starting point to be at. I think, one of the issues is what you just brought up, which is that you're trying to do something good. You're going out there, you're looking for the phrase improves gut health. Maybe you're looking at the least expensive product out there. One of the things that Amazon does that's wonderful and harmful is they will show you the per pill cost. And so if you're really, shopping, discount shopping for your probiotic, that might not be the best thing. It's not to say that things that are inexpensive are not good, but it's just to say that might not be the criteria that you want to use for efficacy.
Discount health shopping might quite literally be discounting your health. You really get what you pay for a lot of times.
Absolutely. And again, because this is an unregulated space, anybody can put a thing up. And Amazon is a great example. A lot of people think that if you go to Amazon, then you're buying something that's been verified or validated in some way. And the truth is, it's not. It's a convenient shopping location where you can get all your different stuff, but they really don't have the same kind of processes or rigor that, say, an FDA-approved site would have. So, for example, Akkermansia is a good example. If you go to Amazon and you type in Akkermansia, you're going to see a bunch of different bottles show up. And I literally just got a text earlier this week from a professor at Cornell who said, hey, I just want to let you know, I bought a bunch of those Akkermansias off Amazon and I just sequenced them. And here's the DNA sequencing data. And only one of them actually had Akkermansia in it. And that was ours. And the rest were all other strains.
What are some ways, maybe some non-obvious ways, besides misinformation and the wrong bottle, that you think people are hurting their gut health? Particularly, I've been hearing a lot more about how alcohol directly affects our gut health.
I'm ignoring all the alcohol is bad for your gut health data.
Really? Really?
No, it really, it's not good for your gut health and your general health. There's ample studies to show the negative impacts of alcohol on various systems.
Zero amounts. But are you saying, in your opinion, you're not seeing as much of a direct detriment to our gut health from alcohol as we maybe are thinking?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying selfishly, even though I do have a science background, I don't like the answer to that, where it all leads us to.
I'm with you. Yeah.
But certainly, as the public service announcement, alcohol is not good for your body.
Why does innovation matter? Because it seems like there are so many similar products and similar approaches to this model of improving our health that we need as new humans, because humans continue to evolve. But where's the innovation in the products to benefit us?
Well, I think there's sort of two things. One is there's a bunch of products on the shelves. All of us have stood in the grocery store and looked at just shelves and shelves of probiotics or prebiotics or things for gut health and just been at a loss or confused. And like you said, you just grab the thing that's maybe right in front of you and you're off. So I think the first thing is there has been a ton of marketing and packaging innovation in the supplement space and in the probiotic space. And so from that perspective, I think one of the craziest things that I learned is that if you start reading labels on these probiotics, you'll start to see all of them start with one of two things: lactobacillus or bifidobacterium. And when you start actually looking at these labels, you start to realize that everything out there is the same ingredients. And then the astounding thing is that those ingredients were grandfathered in by the FDA as safe in the 1970s. That's 50 years of no new ingredients.
So they're like, these ingredients at these amounts are good, and we're just going to take that at face value for over 50 years now?
Yeah. Do you remember what phones were in the 1970s?
Did everybody have a phone in the 70s?
Exactly. With a cord hooked on your wall in the kitchen?
Oh, yeah. I remember my grandparents' house. We had the rotary phone all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really the world we're living in. So were those phones fine? Yes, they were fine. But could everything be better? 100%. And so really when we ask the question, what's the value of innovation? It's, well, we could start targeting things outside of just GI. We could start to target your metabolism, your brain, your cardiovascular health, your immune response, your inflammatory response, your skin health. All of these things require innovation because the products that are out there today were not designed to target those things. And by the way, they only represent a very small fraction of all the microbes that are actually inside of you.
This concept of evolution is important when we're looking at the research and products and just updated information. But evolution is happening at the microscopic level here. And this is really where I want to highlight your background and expertise, because when I was learning more about your research, this aha moment hit me. I was like, of course, this makes sense. And that's how fast and how long bacteria really replicates and duplicates. And it is evolving. It is having generational evolutions, in hours, days, if that. And so, of course, this concept of evolution we need to apply to understanding the bacteria that is feeding our gut. Why is it important for us to respect and know our bacteria's ability to evolve so quickly?
Some of these bacteria divide every 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yes. And so it's fast.
A whole life cycle in 15 minutes?
Yes. I mean, imagine if you could have had kids in 15 minutes, they had kids in 15 minutes, they had kids in 15 minutes. I mean, that's how fast.
I think Nick Cannon does, to be honest.
No comment. But basically, that's the rate of evolution. And so the reason that's important is because what that means, and then the other part to this is that division is happening. And with every division, as with everything in nature, the next generation is intended to be better than the previous one. So there's genetic modifications happening that make the next generation better than the previous one, more resilient. And so that's an important part of just evolution. But the other part is that you control that evolution because you're the one selecting the pressures. So, for example, in caveman days, you had to go out and kill an animal in order to be able to eat, or you had to be able to go out and forage and figure out what's going to be things that are poisonous versus good for you. And so you would be optimizing for people who are really athletic, who could go out there and, hunt down an animal and kill it, and for people who are very detail oriented, who would be able to look through things and not just kind of blindly, but they would pick the things that were really helpful. So in this context, what you're doing is by eating certain foods, by allowing yourself to feel a certain amount of stress, by, your exercise, all of these things that you have control over, you're actually changing the pressures and what these microbes are evolving to be able to be optimized for. Now, there's a lot of things that we don't have control over. One might argue stress is one of them, but these are the selective pressures that as these microbes are evolving, they're evolving for you and your environment and your lifestyle.
I've never thought about it that way. Maybe I'll just speak for myself that what is happening internally directly changes my life externally. The quality of my internal health, what is going on in my homeostasis, is going to be reflected in terms of my energy, muscle mass, body fat, immune system, skin, all that. But I've never thought about it in reverse. What is going on in our life and what we are doing and how we are really building our external life is also building that internal life for billions, trillions of these microscopic life forms.
Absolutely. And the real disconnect is that you're changing these trillions of microbes, this factory that's doing all this metabolism of foods inside of you, but you're not changing. So this is where it becomes really important, the gut-human relationship. So for example, let's say you eat potato chips all day long. That's all you eat. And so what you're doing is you're evolving your microbiome to have potato chip loving microbes. And the rest
conditioning
of them, you're conditioning them to get better and better at that. And then all the other guys who maybe are great at metabolizing carrots or blueberries, they're all dying off because you're not feeding them. And so now you've evolved for potato chip loving microbiome. You've got the most optimal microbiome for that. The problem is that your immune system, your inflammatory response is looking at all the postbiotics, all these small molecules that those guys are making, and it's getting into this heightened inflammatory response or heightened immune response because all of a sudden it's seeing this inundation of these molecules coming out of the microbiome that it doesn't like, it doesn't recognize. So you can be, if you ate potato chips all day, you've got the optimal microbiome for that diet, but your body, it's not optimal for. So then you don't feel well, you have brain fog, you're fatigued, you're not healthy, you have low energy. So that's kind of the disconnect. So when we think about shaping our microbiome, we have to also think about the fact that we are not evolving at that pace.
What are some of the common strains you think most people focus on and why?
Well, I think the most of the strains kind of fall into this family of Lactobacillus or Bifidobacterium, and there is good research around those strains. Lactobacillus plantarum, Lactobacillus gasseri. These are strains that have actually been well studied and have important roles in not only our gut microbiome, but other microbiomes in our body. I think the issue is not that those are bad. The issue is that it's like if you, I said to you like, oh, I want you to build a castle out of these Legos. And I gave you 2 kinds of Legos. And you're like, well, what about all the different kinds of Legos that I could be using to build this amazing castle? So one person's got all the different Legos and windows and cars and wheels, and they make this beautiful castle with a moat that comes down. And you're like, well, I made this block because I only had 2
Right, it's not like impossible completely, but it's way more difficult. And also it doesn't have to be.
Right. It doesn't have to be. So these 2 strains, if that's all you're working with, you've got a much worse tool set than somebody else who is able to have this much wider variety of strains.
Let's get into Akkermansia. I had never heard of it before discovering Pendulum. And I think a lot of people like me, if you're going to supplement your diet with protein, you reach for a protein shake. And I, for years, would always latch onto traditional classic whey protein. And I always felt, like a little bloating, maybe get some gas or just, mild stomach discomfort. I never really latched onto what a lot of people describe of, it just wrecks my stomach. But then about 3 years ago, I switched to a lactose-free whey protein powder. And I didn't know how much better I could feel. I didn't know that I was walking around with all of that stomach discomfort, bloating. I just kind of felt like my stomach was just a little bit flatter. And I liken that sensation to using this guy right here, Akkermansia, to go, wow, I didn't know I was walking around with that much mild bloating. I wouldn't even say like distended stomach, but after I did 30 days using that, I felt so much slimmer, so much toner. I felt just so much more at ease. And it's not like I was really in dis-ease before, but a very noticeable difference. And I was floored that it was coming from something that I had never heard of. Why have we never heard of it before?
The most important strain, I would say, that no one's ever heard of is Akkermansia. And the reason you've never heard of it before is because it's never been available to any of us before. So unless you're somebody who's reading primary literature and, biochemistry news, you're
all the time.
All the time.
For sure. Yeah.
You're not going to know all the things that are happening in the depths of, research and academia. And so because it wasn't available to anybody, nobody's known
it wasn't
about
available in the U.S. or globally, or
anywhere.
Is this a new development?
Anywhere. Like this strain has not been available anywhere. We're the first people to bring it to market.
Did it always exist and you all discovered it, or was it just always there and just kind of overlooked and not as important as it actually is?
It's always existed, but it wasn't really discovered until the early 2000s by this professor at Harvard. Actually, he's a surgeon, a bariatric surgeon at Harvard. And he was really curious, hey, what happens after surgery that makes people lose all this weight? And how come some people keep it off and some people don't? And through all of that research, he kind of discovered this strain Akkermansia. And Akkermansia is an incredibly powerful strain because it does two really different but super important things. The first is gut lining regulation, and the second is it stimulates GLP-1.
Ooh, there's the word. There's the word of the year right there.
There it is. Yeah. Yes, the word of the decade, I might argue.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So first of all, on the gut lining part, so I think many people know that you have a gut lining. It's really important. You want to keep that regulated. I think what a lot of people don't know is kind of the structure of that lining. So it's sort of like a wooden fence where you have all these planks. They're next to each other and they're held together by glue. And so what can happen is you can have this amazing wooden fence, but then over time and through seasons and wear and tear, the glue can start to weaken. The planks can start to get old and then they fall and you've got now, opening in your fence. Your gut lining is exactly the same way. You have these cells, which are these planks, and you have this glue, which is called mucin, that is holding all of them together. And Akkermansia mucinophila, that's its full name. It's the only strain that we know of to date that's job is to sit at that fence and strip away the old glue when it gets old and put up new glue when it needs new glue.
Wow.
And so it's doing that regulation all the time. And so if you're low in Akkermansia, you have an inability to create enough of this, glue regulation. And then you have what a lot of people call leaky gut or GI issues and all of that. And so that sounds like a little bit of what you might have experienced, which is that it sort of helps with general GI from that gut lining perspective. The second thing, which I think you also experienced a little bit of, is that there are only two strains that have ever been shown to be able to stimulate GLP-1. Maybe we'll take a step back. So I think a lot of people have heard of GLP-1s because the drugs have become very, very popular. Those are sort of a fake GLP-1. It's our attempt to mimic actually a natural hormone called GLP-1 that's in your body. So we all naturally make GLP-1, and those drugs are trying to mimic that. Furthermore, it's actually our microbiomes that make GLP-1. And there are two strains which have been shown to stimulate GLP-1. One is Akkermansia. The other one is the strain called Clostridium butyricum. And so if we go back to this, factory, when you eat food, there's one department in this factory that's job it is to convert that food and then turn on GLP-1. And the reason GLP-1 is so powerful is because it is the signal to your brain that you're full, and it's a signal to your brain to not have cravings. So it's sort of like when you go add gas, you put the nozzle in your tank, you set that little thing, and then you don't have to worry about it because when the click happens,
right,
the tank is full and you don't need to add any more fuel to the tank. GLP-1 is that click. And so if you don't have these microbes in that department that set that GLP-1 click off, your body just thinks like, oh, we're not full yet. We just need to keep eating.
Wow. I'm floored to hear, and I think a lot of people don't know this as well, that we create it naturally. If we can just popularize and get to the point that by making lifestyle choices, by focusing on gut health, by looking at things to naturally increase GLP-1, we can get the same or a very, very similar result without going that just, hey, let me just go for the quick fix. The body is so incredibly resilient and capable if we just allow it to be. And it takes a little bit of work, right?
Absolutely. And I think, first of all, that discovery that your microbiome can stimulate GLP-1 and that, hey, there's these 2 strains that really are in this department and that's what they do. And then moreover, like, well, why would somebody be low or missing them? Why would one person have
why
a
would
lot?
that happen?
Right. All of that is new science. So that's really just emerged over the last, 5 to 10 years. And so the reasons it happens are partially things that you have under your control. So your nutrition, how much you exercise, all those things can shape your microbiome.
Wow.
But I think the more interesting part is that a lot of it is completely outside of your control. So things that cause you to be depleted in Akkermansia and these strains include aging, stress, change in the circadian rhythm. So when you travel and night becomes day and day becomes night. For women, when we go through menopause. So there are all of these things that, you can't control aging and you're going to go through periods of stress. You're going to travel. You're not going to stop doing that. And so these are all things that we don't have control over, but we know that those cause you to be depleted in these strains, which is why now if you're having these issues, and to your point, a lot of times you don't even know you're having an issue. You just think, well, this is just part of aging. If you just give yourself back Akkermansia and the food that helps Akkermansia grow, you can get back that GLP-1 stimulation.
Wow.
If we can all kind of remember a time when we could eat or drink whatever we wanted to, and we didn't have to worry about it. Part of why you were able to do that and can't do that now is you're missing these microbes.
Wow.
And that's why the drugs were designed, knowing that biological system, the drugs were designed to essentially mimic the natural thing that your body's doing by saying, okay, well, what if I could make a GLP-1 that, out of a bunch of chemicals? And that's where the drugs really came from, is what your body naturally does.
So you hit on a couple of things I want to go back to real quickly. Some of these concepts that I don't think people really credit enough that directly affect, I'm hearing, our gut health. Circadian rhythm, stress, different biological benchmarks of age and just aging. Can you maybe walk us through a scenario where someone might be out of their norm and they're experiencing gut health issues and they would never think that it's because of, I'm not going to bed at the same time, or you know what, my stress is really unchecked. What can they be doing in those scenarios to really connect the dots?
Well, if you're a really diligent person, I think it's been shown that if you can keep a log of what you're doing and what you're experiencing, a detailed log, what you're eating, what you're feeling, and there's apps that can help you do that you can start to draw these correlations on your own. If you're lazy, like me, then you would try giving yourself these products and seeing if you feel better. Because in a lot of times, you don't really know that you're not feeling it. Like I said, we kind of accept that, my metabolism is going to slow down, or gee, I'm going to be tired, or sometimes I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night. Then the next day is going to be terrible for me, or hey, after lunch, I just always feel tired. And maybe you start to accept that and you don't even know that that's something to be recording or logging because it's just part of what's happening. Or this is my body and this is how it's, how it is. And so I think that when you, especially for these products which are really centered around improving your metabolism, once you start taking them, that's maybe when you start to feel the difference.
Qualitative and quantitative, how we feel and what the numbers show are not always the same thing, at least in my experience. I can feel great. I can feel okay, we'll say. I think we all know when we're feeling really great and dialed in. I can feel okay, but then if I go get labs, I get physical, or I get a comprehensive metabolic panel, like a lot of people do, I do now as well, the numbers show something different. It's like, I didn't know I actually need to work more on this area of my health. I thought I was okay. Or even the opposite. I feel not so great. I feel crappy, but then my numbers show, my A1C is fine, my cholesterol is fine, what is fine really, what is normal, but the numbers don't always match the feeling and vice versa. Which one should we be focusing more on, or what is that balance of the two when it comes to gut health?
When we talk about the numbers around metabolism, so A1C, blood glucose, those are pretty reliable metrics. The thing to remember is that if you go get an A1C measurement, what it's telling you is integrated data over the last 3 months. So whatever you've been doing for the last 3 months, that's what your A1C number is reflective of. So you might had great days during those 3 months and terrible days during those 3 months, and your A1C isn't going to tell you that kind of, difference. your glucose spikes, on the other hand, can be very much tied to that. So if you wear a continuous glucose monitor, I actually just experienced this a couple of weeks ago. So I wore a continuous glucose monitor. I wanted to test our new product, GLP-1. I had this like crazy situation where I had a meal one evening and I was in range. First of all, I don't have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. And so I generally am in range for stuff, but everybody has certain foods that cause you to spike. So I had this meal, I was in range. And then 2 days later, I had leftovers of this. It was the exact same meal. And I spiked out of range for it. And it was a dinner. So I like had it at dinner time, the same time of day, the same meal. And I was completely baffled. And I was talking to a registered dietitian about it. And she said, well, do you think it's possible you were dehydrated that second time around? And I thought about it and I was like, oh man, I did. I had a kind of a crazy day. I probably didn't drink as much water as I did, the other day. And if you're a little bit dehydrated, your glucose response is exacerbated, and the CGM showed me that. And so I think these are the kind of little tweaks where that data can be really, really powerful. And that's not to discount the way that you feel and how important that is, but it's just to say that, those numbers, really understanding what they're telling you and what they mean can be important for changing your lifestyle. These little tweaks can make a big difference.
If we want to go the quantitative route, we want to get some labs drawn, what are the best things to look at or to request to measure gut health? You mentioned A1C, blood sugar. I think those are really solid as well. Is there anything else that we can be asking for or requesting?
Yeah. So to be clear, A1C and blood glucose, that's for metabolism. So not necessarily a measure of your gut health. You could have terrible numbers for other reasons like dehydration.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And so
are there things we can request for gut health?
There are a lot of gut tests out there right now. They're not really, it's an unregulated space, so nobody has to pass any certain thing with the government in order to put a gut microbiome test out there. And then furthermore, there's no standardization about how do you measure the gut. So like if you go to the doctor or you go through telehealth and you get your blood work done and it tells you, your IgA levels or your cholesterol levels, there's an agreed on way in which that lab had to process your blood and had to take that measurement and had to report standards that say that, yes, we all agree this is the number.
It's, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is it's that lab in that community. So you go to another state, you go to another city even, you go get labs drawn, you could have totally different ranges that show up.
It could be different ranges.
Very population based.
I think it's more actually regulatory based, but yeah.
Okay.
So I think that. So then you have that, but then with the gut tests, there's not even an agreement on should you measure this thing by, DNA sequencing, or should you measure by this other, by plating and culturing? Like there's all these different tools that people use, and you don't know unless you're like deep diving into this company how they're actually measuring it. And there's no standardization in reporting. And then furthermore, frankly, we're really early in our microbiome knowledge. So what do you do with that data? It's hard for me. I think I would love for everyone to get gut microbiome tests and get them over and over again so that you can get your baseline. At some point in the future, we will know what to do with this data. But I think right now it's a little early to get too fired up about that. One thing you can do to measure your gut health, though, that's been around for a while is measure your zonulin levels.
What's that?
So zonulin is a protein that basically measures your gut lining health. And so it's just a blood test. So that's probably the best thing we've got right now.
I want to kind of go back to where it all started for you. I haven't said it yet. Well, you probably heard it on the separate intro, but you have a PhD in all of this, and you are very, very in the weeds, in the gut of all of this. What have you seen happen in your professional history from when you started to where we are now? We've talked about the evolution quite a bit of science, of application. I'm sure someone who's been doing this for longer than me, that you've seen a lot of things change. Has that influenced or changed your approach to gut health at all? Has it influenced or changed recommendations? Do you see it just happening so fast that it's really kind of hard to say even right now?
Yeah, it's a super fast-growing area, and so we've been in it for a little over a decade, and our company has, and the evolution in that time has been huge. So I can tell you, the first year we started this company, there was a professional microbiome conference, and they got all of us together. It was in Washington, D.C., and there were about 5 of us companies in this room. There were less than 50 people. It was like everybody brought their whole company, and we all were in this room together. And now if you go to a microbiome conference, it's just thousands and thousands of people. And there's microbiome conferences. If I wanted to, I could go to one every week, and just in the U.S. alone. And so that has exploded. And what that means is that there's a lot of awesome data out there that's moving us forward, and there's a lot of junk that's getting produced out there. So I think what it's meant is, for us, is really starting to be super discerning about separating what's actually believable and really rigorous science from what's all the stuff that people are just doing to like get a fast publication or get a quick product out the door. And I think that's also a challenge for the consumer, which is what should you be buying when there are more and more of these things popping up every day, and how do you discern what's real and really backed and what's just somebody trying to make a quick buck off of you. And so that's it. It's just a lot of data and a lot of junk, and we all have to sift through it.
Is our gut going to get reset, or do we just have to keep working on it forever?
So the annoying answer to that question is it depends.
That's just the right answer, I think, for everything when it comes to our health. I'm not going to lie. I'm with you. I say it depends a lot, and that's a very important statement.
Yes, it depends. It depends on your microbiome, and it depends on all these factors that got you to where you are now. And so, in the best case scenario, you have an ecosystem in your microbiome that allows you to take 30 days of Akkermansia, and now you've got Akkermansia has been able to colonize. It has all of its friends there that it likes to work with, and they're all, kind of happily thriving. Then your only job is, I have to make sure that I feed the Akkermansia. So I have to make sure that I'm eating high fiber foods, high polyphenol foods, and that's giving the Akkermansia the food that it needs to sustain.
Okay.
So that's sort of best case scenario. You can colonize a thing, and then you just have to eat the right foods to keep it alive. You can have healthy people who are doing all the, pretty good stuff that still see a benefit when they supplement with the strains that they have been missing. And we have seen that time and time again with, people, physicians, influencers, nutritionists, who all are really healthy people at baseline and then experience an improvement. And it's because there are all these things that are out of your control that can cause you to lose the strains.
Who has the most to gain by focusing on prioritizing and improving their gut health? Or do we all kind of have as much to gain? It's just to what degree?
Maybe philosophically, we can all be better versions of ourselves. So if you believe that, then everybody has something to gain by having a healthier gut. And even getting a little bit more philosophical about it, I think if you wish or you hope or you believe that you could be in a better future state than you are in today, you have everything to gain. And if you've thrown up your hands and you've given up and you're like, this is just how it is, and I've resigned to this, then it may be less valuable for you. So I think that what I've observed is that most people, if you can improve your gut health, you will experience a benefit either in your numbers or in the soft benefits, the things that you feel. And so therefore, if you're looking to have a better life, this is at least worth a shot. I mean, let's put it this way. You're not going to hurt yourself by trying to improve your gut health, but you have a lot of upside benefit you could get.
And as someone who has prioritized taking care of his wellness for almost 20 years now, I kind of started my own new health, new me journey, about 18 years ago.
And what triggered that for you? What made you decide to focus on that?
2 major life events. I lost a loved one. There was my father passed away from a terminal illness. So that was it was a little different. It wasn't really anything I could do about it. It's non-hereditary, thankfully. So that was one thing.
But it put things into perspective, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of an extreme example, but I have diabetics in my family. And so I've grown up and I've seen grandparents and aunts, need to inject insulin and struggle with weight issues and other complications that come when that doesn't go checked. And so there was this extreme case of death and also other, chronic illness in my family. Like, I don't want that. And then I went through a major health setback myself. It was more injury related, not an illness that ultimately I wound up having to learn how to walk again twice.
Wow.
And so when you have nothing but time on your hands and you're bedridden for quite a while, you can go one of two ways, I think. And it could be, woe is me, this sucks, my life is over. And I had those moments, I'm not going to lie. But I decided to go the other route of, all right, if I'm stuck here, I might as well learn how to make this situation as best as possible. And that's when I really began to dive into nutrition and physiology, and ultimately led to me, when I got out of the military, to go study it and put me on my path where I'm doing now.
Amazing. And then now you're really sharing all of that with other people.
I share maybe a little bit too much sometimes, but I do want to share one other thing that I've shared on social media thus. Actually, I don't think I have. I was waiting to kind of get the labs back, and I do now. And despite my best efforts, as long as I can remember and getting tested, I have not had an A1C below 5.1.
Okay.
Which isn't bad.
Yeah.
I'm not pre-diabetic. It's not, but I'm shooting for more of that optimal range, sub that, even high fours. And it wasn't until taking Pendulum's products, the glucose control, that I was able to achieve that. And it blew my mind. I'm trying to live a good life, but have a fun life. And I was like, okay, that plus this is actually helping me get to a goal that I've always wanted. And I was blown away.
I love that story. And I can tell you, I have been so astounded by people who, if somebody said to me, do you think that guy's going to benefit from your product? I'd probably be like, probably not. He looks pretty healthy. I don't know that it's going to do anything for him.
I think a lot of us can say that. Yeah, about a lot of people.
And I have been astounded at how many people who are doing what you're doing and come back to me and are like, my A1C dropped. I can't believe it. And so I think that is sort of the whole reason that I got into health in the first place, and was to be able to make products that would be impactful. And so I love hearing that story, because it really points to the fact that you can be doing all the right things, and for whatever reason, you're just low in these strains. And how easy is it to just be like, all right, well, I'm going to take these pills that have the strain, give it back to my body, and voila, now I have these capabilities back again. I've resupplemented that department. I put more resources into it. And so I love that. I love that story.
But also just really how much our gut health and how much our overall health directly affects our mood, our mental health. Long story short, this year, 2024, to here we are now, end of March, has not been the norm for me in terms of my regular training, physical activity levels. I've had to kind of backseat a lot of that, the ways that I normally train, due to some mental health issues going on. And with that, I know for doing this 18 years, if I'm not training the same way, frequency, intensity, time type, that I'm going to need to alter my nutrition a little bit, because my metabolism is going to be fluctuating. I don't need as many calories. I need to be focusing more on nutrition and cleaning that up if I'm not exercising as much. And with that has been some struggles, because I like to eat. And I've noticed that the way that I feel, and by focusing on metabolic health through my nutrition, but plus Pendulum products, I've been able to really stick to that goal way easier than I thought. And it's also because I feel better. I feel, like I said earlier, I feel not as distended. I didn't know that I had so much kind of, bloating and just, I thought this is just how I look and how I feel, but no, there are some gut health things going on that has really helped me maintain. And that has not only helped keeping me at this normal kind of health and feeling and body composition, but really my mental health. And I got enough going on with that right now that I don't need any other stressors. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that when we can find something that helps us in how we look, it directly influences how we feel, and that just keeps feeding one another.
Absolutely. But furthermore, these microbes actually do directly work with your...
Right. So I would like to ask you, and then directly, it's not just in my head, right? So what is going on then that's influencing brain health, mood, and all the things up top that we might not directly link back down to the gut? Yeah.
So there's two things kind of in your story that I would say you're not alone in feeling those things. So basically, the gut and the brain are connected to each other. They're literally physically connected to each other through this thing called the vagus nerve. And your microbiome actually makes a bunch of neurotransmitters. And so you might be wondering, like, why is your microbiome making neurotransmitters? Because it's literally sending those to the brain. So dopamine, serotonin, all of these GABA, all these really important neurotransmitters. And your gut actually makes a ton more of them than your brain even does. And so if you've ever felt, I've eaten this meal and now I feel really sluggish or I'm kind of down, that's not just in your head. That is literally your microbiome is sending different signals to your brain. So two things. The first is that Akkermansia actually is able to produce GABA, like lots of it.
Really?
And GABA is a quite well-known small molecule that helps reduce stress and anxiety. It's sort of a calming
I'm just going to
neurotransmitter.
say all the Akkermansia I can find. I'm just going to take it even more. Wow.
So there's that. But the second thing is, and so there's Akkermansia kind of in all of these formulations. So GLP-1 has Akkermansia in it as well. And as I said, there are 2 strains that have ever been published that can stimulate GLP-1. We have those 2 strains in here, plus a third one that we know works with them. So this is a combo of 3 strains, including Akkermansia. And one of the things about GLP-1, we talked about that click to tell your body that you're full, is that it reduces your food cravings. And so that is one of the biggest things that happens when people go off the GLP-1 drugs, is that they get all these food cravings back, and that contributes to the terrible weight gain. But conversely, when they go on the drugs, they have very few food cravings, and that helps accelerate the weight loss. And so the food cravings are really important. And what I recently learned about food cravings is we all have them. And we've all come home late at night. You should just go to bed, but instead you put a frozen pizza in the oven and you eat the whole thing. Or you grab a spoon and you're like, I'm just going to have 1 spoon of ice cream. The next thing you know, half the container is going back.
Actually, let me go find the biggest spoon possible.
Yes.
Just have 1 spoonful. Yeah.
Yes, one exactly, full pintful spoonful. So we've all done that. And then what happens after that is it's not just in the moment that, you made that decision, you kind of caved to your food cravings. What happens is you walk around with that guilt that, oh man, I was weak. I did that thing that I knew wasn't good for me and it's terrible for my body and I'm just weak and I succumb to it. I don't have control. 80% of women are walking around with food guilt. 70% of men are walking around with food guilt. Generally, men feel less guilty than women, but that's still a lot of, that's everybody, right?
Yeah.
That's 70 to 80% of everybody has food guilt because of these food cravings. And so that's astounding. That means we're all feeling guilty because we feel we don't have control over ourselves. And so when you understand that you might just be not making as much GLP-1, and if you were making more, you would now not have these food cravings because that click happens and your body knows I'm full. I don't need to eat any more food. It is a game changer. And so we did a study after being 6 weeks on the GLP-1 probiotic. 91% of people had lower food cravings using this diagnostic test for food cravings.
In just 6 weeks.
In 6 weeks.
Wow.
And it was across this food cravings test tests the 4 primary types of food cravings. So everybody usually knows what group they fall into. There's sugars, carbs, fast foods, and high-fat foods. I'm definitely a carb weakness.
Oh, yeah. Carbs and sugars, carbs and sweets. Yeah, all day.
And so it was reduced across all 4 of those categories of food cravings. And so this is really an opportunity to try out whether if you were to give yourself probiotics that help you stimulate that GLP-1, can you experience what 91% of these people experience, which is less food cravings?
It's such a great example of how often we get bogged down in thinking that it's self-control and willpower, and that is the thing making or breaking our health goals. But it might be a little bit of that. I do believe there is some of that mindset and that mental fortitude that needs to be developed, but it might not be. It might be just an unideal gut health situation.
Absolutely. And even if it's half and half, you could solve half of it.
Why not work on both?
Right,
yeah. Why
right.
not work on the mental fortitude? Why not work on that willpower? But also, why not set your literal body up for as much success as possible?
Exactly.
Before I get to my final question, I want to ask, just with your background and what everything the pendulum is doing, if you can talk about it, is there anything on the frontier, on the horizon, that you're most excited about when it comes to gut health?
There's so many things that I'm really excited about when it comes to gut health. So we've really been focused on metabolism. How do you boost someone's metabolism? How do you metabolize sugars and carbs better through the microbiome? And I think there's still a lot more to be had on that front. But I'm super interested in this gut-brain axis. So this 91% of people having reduced food cravings. I think that's fascinating. And maybe
92% now with me and the cookie.
92% with you and the
adding
cookie.
to the stats.
There's all this. So I started my career actually in pharma. We were developing drugs for Parkinson's disease. And when we were developing drugs for that disease, we focused really on the brain, which is where you get kind of these plaques that form in the brain. And the whole goal was to get rid of those. If anything, any drug that you could deliver that could reduce those plaques would show up for people as reduced symptoms of Parkinson's disease. What I learned recently is that your gut also has neurons. And unlike your brain, where we all know you kind of get what you get, and so if you kill them, they don't come back, the neurons in your gut, they actually regenerate. They're constantly regenerating. And so remember I said we make all these neurotransmitters. There's also these neurons in our gut that are benefiting from those neurotransmitters. And then, so first of all, they continue to regenerate, unlike your brain. But then second of all, these plaques that show up in the brain, it's been shown that actually they first show up in those gut neuronal cells. And so it's possible that they are the first ones to have a problem. They send a signal to the brain, and then you start to see it in the brain.
Issues in the brain are secondary to the gut.
That's the theory right now. And so I think it's super cool if you could target the gut neurons. If that's actually the way to target things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and autism. So these things that we've always thought of as neuronal diseases, if they actually do start in the gut.
I'm way more intrigued in that now. That's incredible. But also, I shared with you earlier, my father passed away from ALS.
That's another huge one. Yeah.
That is incredible information, I think, for research and potential help with that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
There are so many people doing amazing research in this field that are applicable in ways that, we would never have thought of even just 10 years ago. And so really the name of the game now is what's real and what's kind of, shady business. And so I'm grateful for you as being one of the people that's bringing real science and real knowledge to people, because for most of us, we're not spending time reading through all this literature and sifting through stuff and figuring out for ourselves. We need other people to help guide us. And so I think this is such a valuable thing that you're bringing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, everyone, if you want to check out more of what Colleen and Pendulum has to offer, I have it all linked for you down in the video notes and show notes. And we've got a great offer for you guys to check out as well to get a great discount. Again, I personally have been using a couple months now before we ever sat down, 3 of your products, and I'll link all the ones I personally have been using. And like I said in the episode, I've had fantastic results. And I'm a person that is pretty dialed in overall, but to see and feel a difference, especially in an area for my metabolic health, my A1C, that has been very important to me for over the years, because that is something that if I do kind of let my attention slip, I know that can lead to something that I'm genetically predisposed to. So I was amazed to see that A1C come down below 5.1, and amazed to see and feel an incredible difference. And it has helped me move forward in my life and my wellness. And so, Colleen, I'll ask you the final question. Ever forward, when you hear those words, what does that mean to you? How would you say you live a life ever forward?
Well, I think ever forward means that we are always making forward progress, and we are hopeful that we can live in a future world that's better than the current world we're in now. And so for me, I decided a long time ago that health is how I wanted to make my mark. And so every day, getting to wake up and spend all my day trying to create products that are going to help people, and then getting to hear these stories of people who are actually benefiting from them, and how do we get it to where we can help millions of people improve their health. That for me is ever forward. We are moving forward in health and in bringing new tools to people, and it's exciting and a gift to be able to do that.
And look, if our gut microbes are advancing in life and moving forward every 15 minutes, we got to get on their level. We got to maybe start setting a 15-minute timer and go.
Am I better now?
Am I better now? I mean, maybe not. But this has been incredible. Thank you so much. And seriously, I've been loving Pendulum products, and they've helped my daily wellness in some ways that I thought I was just at. I thought this is it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.